The ever-popular Amazon Prime series The Boys is returning for a third season, with the first 3 episodes dropping at once, followed by weekly releases for the rest of the show. Now, I got to watch the whole thing early, so does it continue in the mayhem that we've come to expect? It's been a year of calm. Homelander's subdued, Butcher works for the government, supervised by Huey of all people. But both men itch to turn this peace and quiet into blood and bone. So when the boys learn of a mysterious anti-soup weapon, it sends them crashing into the Seven, starting a war, and chasing the legend of the first superhero, Soldier Boy. I absolutely loved the massive amount of satire and social commentary the previous 2 seasons have packed into this superhero series. It's biting, fresh, ultra-violent, but extremely relevant. In fact, if you just revisit the last couple of episodes from season 2, it's like they were written and filmed within the last couple of weeks with everything that's been going on inside the United States. This third season didn't start off with as much pointed commentary, but that doesn't mean it's not present. There are some extremely humorous arcs that are completely on point, whether they're calling out politics, fanaticism, racism, family, or very obviously, hero worship. All of these themes are expertly skewered, and while some of it may be subtle, the majority is right there in our faces. Because, come on, let's face it. A lot of people just don't get subtlety, and they need it said loudly for the cheap seats. Now, if you watch this show for the violence, this season is not going to disappoint at all. There is a tremendous amount of blood and gore, and I was pretty surprised at all the ways that they found to destroy a person. The kills are creative, unique, sometimes grotesque, but always hyper-violent. And while it's shocking at times, it's also meant to be. It's meant to push the envelope of gruesome, which these episodes, they absolutely do with ease. Good gravy. Just in the first handful of minutes of the first episode, a person is ended in a very unexpected way. Now, the cast is phenomenal, and each of them is giving some very nuanced performances. Anthony Starr as Homelander, he's excellent. And with each passing moment, we get to watch his descent, which is completely in line with what we've seen in the first 2 seasons. He's arrogant, power-hungry, ruthless, and even unhinged. But there are also some moments within this season where we can feel a bit of compassion towards him. They're brief and not always lasting, but the character is very dynamic and he's exciting to watch. He's every bit of toxic masculinity present, cranked up to 11 and then given crack. He's a walking satire, and it's hard not to be drawn into his performance. Carl Urban is awesome in this as well, playing a character that can be equally as repulsive, but he's still got so much charisma, and then there's that Aussie accent, that everything he says just sounds cool, or menacing, or fed up. It's probably just a mixture of all of those. Now, we saw in season 2 that he's going to watch out for Ryan, which brings out a bit of a paternal side to him. But because Butcher is so dysfunctional and all of his relationships suck, this is going to be a massive challenge for him. I like that there are definite parallels in Butcher's life regarding family and then how his own history influences his struggles. Now, it's not a new concept within the show, but the theme of fatherhood doubles way down in this season. Sure, we have seen Homelander with Ryan, and because of what happened in season 2, we now see that dynamic between Butcher and Ryan. But there are a ton of other paternal-focused storylines that we get to see play out. And it doesn't have to be relegated to strictly a father-son relationship either. Really, any protector role over one who can't necessarily defend themselves fits within this narrative. And I especially enjoyed how this plays out between Frenchie and Kimiko. There's certainly a protector role going on, and has been, but who's protecting who? Now I'm loving the dynamic between Huey and Annie. There's always been a bit of a power imbalance, and as their relationship matures, they're just going to have to deal with it. I guess they don't really have to deal with it, they can just call it quits. But the relational aspect between the two is very engaging, and I enjoyed their conversations and their interactions because they pull it off very convincingly. The rest of the players are great as well, and I'm not going to go character by character, but we do get more depth on a few of them, which I really appreciate. There's backstory that's unveiled, making some very engaging story arcs. Now, there is a new addition to the cast who was shown in the trailers as well as a ton of the marketing material that's just been all over the place. And that's the addition of Jensen Ackles as Soldier Boy. With Soldier Boy, you gotta kind of think Captain America, but jaded, mean, and just generally bad. He's stupid powerful, and he's fun to watch, especially because of his interactions. He's pretty inappropriate for the time, and he's ultra machismo, leaning very heavily into the toxic alpha male persona. Now again, just like through most of the show, Soldier Boy is walking satire, and it's not subtle at all. As it's been pretty much throughout the show, politics is one of the major targets of the social commentary. Now, this season also heavily critiques the news media and the blind, rabid fervor that extremist media shows evoke in the public, who then eat every one of their words as if they're life giving. I mean, it's funny, even hilarious, but also very scary at how accurate of a picture this show paints of the United States. Now, within this commentary, this season also plays heavily on the idea of culpability and then remorse, especially as it pertains to the public eye. What makes an apology sincere or acceptable? And what does the public demand or want from its leaders and those it holds up in esteem? The episodes are each right around an hour long, and there are 8 in total. So while you settle in for your weekly binge, it is enough to provide a satisfying watch. And then because the story is really packing in a lot of entertainment within each episode, this can become a watching event. Now, of course, there are some of the episodes that are cliffhanger endings, so that is going to suck to wait a week. Now, I think that at portions throughout the narrative, pieces of the story feel a bit forgotten, or at least shoved way into the background. There are portions that start off as pretty prominent and then seemingly important, but then just kind of fade and are barely addressed. Now, this doesn't happen with every storyline, but there were a couple that, as an episode was going along, I'd pause to just wonder where another storyline had gone, since I hadn't seen anything on it for quite some time. Some of the storyline with Newman feel like they drop off, especially after some very impactful scenes. Now, she's not a forgotten portion altogether, but it was weird to have a big focus on her early on and then have her arc just kind of disappear as the show went along. And some of that could just be from trying to pack in a bunch of storytelling. It's an ambitious story, but also one that's fairly straightforward at its core. And it only gets complicated when the narrative deviates from the central path. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it was just noticeable. So overall, Season 3 of The Boys is a wonderful satirical take on idols, politics, media, family, and loyalty. While the concept of the show may seem like it's juvenile and immature, the themes examined are anything but. This is intelligent writing with plenty of depth and wit to satisfy deep thinkers, but also enough blood, sex, and gore to excite just about anyone. It's a great mix of the profound and the profane, and The Boys pulls it off in a disgustingly satisfying manner. The acting is exceptional, with nuanced performances that draw on deep and heartfelt emotions, creating characters that are vibrant, emotive, and then deeply flawed. And despite some of the story elements feeling like they do get a bit lost over time, the narrative as a whole is engaging and entertaining. There is an absolute ton of sex, nudity, profanity, and violence. In no way, shape, or form is this meant for younger audiences. I give Season 3 of The Boys 4.5 out of 5 couches. So do you have a favorite character in this? I think my favorite is Kimiko, but I'd love to know yours in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.